Hey everyone, Mr. Wada here, and today we're using my new recording setup. I hooked up webcam up there now. So anyways, a couple of resources that you have available to you before you get started with your assignment for today. First, I made this little guide for you to use. It shows the group number, valence electrons, number of bonds, and unpaired electrons. And it shows you in color coding how the pattern works for that. So you got yellow, you got green, and you got blue there for examples. So use that please when you're going through this. I realized that you needed a little bit of extra help, many of you, so I wanted to make sure you had this available. So this is posted along with the video and the assignment. So please use this. This is a really helpful resource for today. Also, I am posting a copy of this periodic table. This is the periodic table that I like to use now, and it's the one that's been in the videos in the past. So you'll have these two things available with you for the assignment as well as the video I'm recording right now. Okay, so in the last video, what we went over was how we could draw pictures of molecules without drawing the electrons themselves, and how we could draw examples of molecules just by using lines. We went over double bonds, triple bonds, and things called isomers. So we're going to start by going over the answers to the last homework, and then we're going to be doing more of the same types of problems this time. Next week we'll start our next topic. So to start, the examples from last time that we're going to go over are SiS2, CH2O, and N2SH4, which is the most complicated by far. So to start, we need to remember the steps to do this. So to start, we need to find which thing makes the most bonds. So we have Si, S2. If you take out your periodic table and use this resource here, the little guide I made for you, we're looking for silicon and sulfur. Silicon is in group 4. Since it's in group 4A, that means it makes 4 bonds. Okay, now we're looking for sulfur. Sulfur is in group 6A. That means it has 6 valence electrons and it makes 2 bonds. Okay, we need to pick which one goes in the middle, and that's going to be the one that makes more bonds. So out of the two, since silicon makes 4 bonds, and since sulfur makes 2, that means silicon has to go in the middle. So we're going to start with silicon in the middle. Okay, the next step is to bond each of the elements that you're using at least one time. So we're going to start by doing that once, and then after we've attached everything, then we'll figure out if we need doubles or triples. And the goal at the end of this is to use up all of your bonds. If all of the elements have used all of their bonds, your picture is done. So I'm going to start by attaching the 2 sulfurs. So we have one line here showing the sulfur is connected to silicon, and one line here showing the other sulfur is connected to silicon. At this point, you would look at it and go, okay, all the pieces are connected, but we haven't done enough bonds. Both sulfurs are supposed to have 2 bonds, and both sulfurs only have 1 bond. Silicon is supposed to have 4 bonds, but instead it only has 2 bonds. So to fix that, we are going to have to use double bonds. So if you add a second bond here, now this sulfur has 2 bonds. Okay, that one's all set. This one is 1 short. Add the second, and now there are 4 bonds for the silicon. 1, 2, 3, 4. Checks out, all set. Sulfur both need 2. 1, 2, 1, 2. We're done. Next up was CH2O. And out of these, if you go back to your resource again, your periodic table, carbon is in 4A, and since it's in 4A, I should highlight it there, we go, 4A, it is going to make 4 bonds. Next up we have our hydrogen. Hydrogen is in group 1, that means it is going to make 1 bond, and oxygen is in group 6, right there, 6. So it's going to make 2 bonds. Again, use this resource. Use it. Okay. So, since we know that carbon is going to make 4, hydrogen is going to make 1, and oxygen is going to make 2. The one that makes the most bonds goes in the middle. So, which goes in the middle? Hopefully you answered carbon, because carbon makes the most bonds, it goes in the middle. Okay, carbon goes in the middle. Next step, what do we need to do next? Next we need to attach all of the pieces at least once. Okay, so I am going to just draw a line. Hydrogen is attached. Both hydrogens are attached. Oxygen is attached. All the pieces are there. We have 2 hydrogens, 1, 2. We have 1 oxygen, and we have our 1 carbon. Okay, do they have enough bonds yet? Carbon has 1, 2, 3 bonds. Okay, so I'm going to just mark it. I need to fix carbon. Hydrogen should only have 1 bond. Look at that. They both have 1 bond. So hydrogens, they're all set. I'm going to put a check under it to make sure I know that. And then for oxygen, it's supposed to make 2. So only 1 bond here. Okay, so we need to fix that one. Is there any way that I can fix the carbon and oxygen problem? Well, they both need 1 more bond. Carbon has 3 and it needs 4. Oxygen has 1 and it needs 2. So if I add another bond here, now I have all of the bonds I needed. Carbon has 1, 2, 3, 4. Both hydrogens have 1. And this oxygen has 2. So everything is all set. We're done. So next we need to do N2SH4. Okay, this one is by far the hardest out of all of those. N2SH4. Okay, step 1, just like the last ones. Take a look at this little guide. Find the elements on the periodic table. Nitrogen, group 5. Group 5, 3 bonds. Okay, sulfur, group 6. Group 6, 2 bonds. Hydrogen, group 1, 1 bond. Which of those makes the most? Nitrogen. So which ones are going to go in the middle? Nitrogen. Okay. Now there's more than one way you could actually draw this, but we are going to start with nitrogen in the middle. Okay, now we need to attach the pieces. You are going to add the ones that make the most bonds first. So I could go nitrogen, and then I have sulfur. Okay, that's the next one. It makes 2 bonds, which is more than hydrogen. So I'm going to put sulfur here. Okay, how can we add 4 hydrogens here and end up with the right number of bonds? Well, this nitrogen is making 2 bonds. How many more should it make? 1. So you attach 1 more, and that'll be a hydrogen. Now this nitrogen is all set. Well done. Sulfur. Sulfur should make 2 bonds. It has made 1 bond. If I attach a hydrogen, now it has made 2 bonds. Sulfur, all set. We still need to add 2 more hydrogens, and this nitrogen only has 1 bond. It needs 3. So to fix that, you add the 2 hydrogens. 1, 2. And if you check, both nitrogens have 3 bonds, sulfur has 2, and all the hydrogens have 1. Alright, well you may have noticed there's a second way you could draw this. If you do the exact same thing, but you start by going nitrogen, sulfur, nitrogen, now you can attach all of the hydrogens on the outside here. So your 2 isomers would look like this. Okay, admittedly, that was probably too hard of an example for me to give for the previous assignment. So I'm not going to mark anyone off if you missed that one. To make sure that you can do this last assignment, we have the last example here, which is going to be doing isomers with a more simple example. So we're going to have CH2 F2. Okay, so step 1, look at the center element that we're going to have to use. Carbon, first up. Carbon, group 4, 4 bonds. Hydrogen, group 1, 1 bond. Fluorine, group 7, 1 bond. So which of those is going to have to go in the middle? Carbon. So you draw carbon, and then everything has to get attached to that carbon. Since all of these only make 1 bond, this is actually really easy, because each of these can only attach once, and there are 4 elements here. We know that those would match up with the 4 bonds. So, I'm going to show you, though, that there's more than one way you could draw this. Okay, so notice, since they all make 1 bond, everything works as long as you attach it. I can change the way that those are attached, and it wouldn't change the number of pieces that we've used. For example, instead of going hydrogen, hydrogen, fluorine, fluorine, I could go hydrogen, fluorine, hydrogen, fluorine. Notice those both use the exact same number of pieces, but I've arranged them differently. So, those are isomers. For your assignment for today, I'm going to ask you to do the following. Draw for me C2, F6. Draw me 2 isomers, just like we did up here. For NH2F. And the last part to this is going to be drawing BH3 and SiI4.